So here's a little follow-up on my Maksutov blanket that I made a while back, a year or so ago. Looks kind of homemade, maybe even a little silly, but it works. And I picked up another Maksutov here very recently, used, got a real good deal, and I'll show it to you. I'm going to do the same thing with it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think it works and any issues with when it doesn't work. So here is the new used one I picked up. And this is a Orion brand, and it's a 127, so it's 5 inches. And this one here is F12. I'm kind of going by memory. I don't see the... Yeah, there it is, the information. I think it's like 1,540 millimeter focal length, which is pretty cool. You figure that's 1.5 meters. So that's like 65 inches or something. But anyway, I still have some of that material. And it's all stuff I had. The only thing I bought was I went to Walmart and bought, it's a yoga mat, real cheap thing for, I don't know, $15 or $20. And I didn't have to use near all of it, so I got plenty left. And then I also had some bubble wrap from packages I'd received where I'd just been kind of rat holing it, saving it, thinking someday I'll use it, and it actually came in handy. So what I'll do, it's the same idea as dressing in layers, you know, in the winter when you go out and they tell you to wear layers. I'm going to wrap the bubble wrap layer around here first. And then I'm going to put the yoga mat material, which is just real flexible rubber, around that. And I'm going to extend it out a ways to make kind of a lens hood dewshield combination. Now, you've probably heard a lot of people say that a Maksutov is really fussy or finicky, if you will, about getting it stabilized to the ambient temperature when you take it outside. And I mean, if you take it out, if it's spring or fall and it's not very cold out, or even, you know, something like that late summer where it's the indoor temperature is not that much different than the outdoor. You might not notice that much unless you just happen to have a lot of humidity and then the dew point gets you. So what I realized after messing with that for a while and thinking about it, okay, the corrector plate in a Mac is much thicker than that in a Schmidt Cassegrain. And I don't know exactly how thick this is. I've never taken it out, but it looks, really it's fairly thick, because I mean it's got a lot of curve to it, so it may be that thick, while the one for a Schmidt Cassegrains may be only 1/8 of an inch or something. So this one may be 1 inch or more. I don't know, like I said, I don't know exact, but it's a big difference. But so this doesn't change temperature fast, but this metal tube does. And so does the air inside the tube. So that's where I started realizing the idea was, because I kept wondering about it, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. If I wrap a blanket around this thing, it takes even longer for this thing to stabilize to the outdoor temperature. So the idea here is not so much that you're trying to get this to match the outdoor temperature, as it is you don't want the rapidly changing temperature in particular to be affecting this. So like I say, if you go outside and say I've had it in my house and the house is 65, 70 degrees, 75, whatever, and the outdoor temperature isn't that much different, it doesn't take that much longer for it to balance in the temperature. But if you have that temperature that you take it into from indoors, and you go outside and let's say the sun sets in the fall and the winter and it starts getting cold quick, well, part of the issue with this stabilizing is the outside air is not stabilizing either. So it's kind of, you know, it shocks it. It's kind of like if I went outside and it's cold outside and I'm wearing shorts and short sleeves instead of wearing a coat. It shocks me, I start shivering. Same idea here in a sense. Of course, the telescope's not shivering, but the image might be. Because what they say is, when this cools off, that cold air, it's kind of sinking, it can start kind of bouncing back and forth. And with high power magnification, it shows up and you get a crappy image. It's not steady. So the idea here, I'll stabilize that, and it actually changes temperature very slowly, which is good. So it's going to be stable from the beginning, is the whole idea. It's just like if you're wearing a coat, if you go outside, if you're nice and warm in your coat, the cold weather doesn't shock you as much, you know, unless it's real miserable out. So it's the same idea here. It gets it stabilized before the temperature starts going down. And it does, so it's going to cool more slowly, but it's also going to avoid the air bouncing around. And then having the dew shield idea here helps too. That helps keep that cold air from coming down and settling on here. So the time when I have noticed a problem, let's say if I'm out there and it's about 100% humidity, and I point up real high in the sky, looking at ring nebula or whatever, now that cold air can drop straight down and hit this corrector plate, so it can get dewed up or frosted up really quick. And then that's one of the things, my concerns with that other one, because when I had that blanket on there, I didn't leave, I could do it. I could take it apart if I wanted to put a dew heater on. So I would have to take the cover off, put the dew heater on, and then put that back on. So then, of course, the little blanket, I'd have to find a way to maneuver the cord. I'd have to cut a little notch or something so the dew heater cord could go down. But it could do it. And also that got me wondering, maybe when you put a dew heater on one of these, some of these dew heaters might not be strong enough to really keep this whole glass stable. I'm not sure about that part, but it got me wondering. But anyway, the blanket idea definitely helped me. I've used this quite a bit when the humidity was 100% and I was getting dew all over my keyboard and the grass was soaking wet and my car out there was soaking wet with dew all over it. And I was getting a good image. And the outside of the blanket area it'd be damp. And I even noticed a little bit on the inside of the dew shield, but it wasn't getting all the way up to this, and this was not fogged up. So anyway, we'll cut out one and make one for this. Okay, so here I am at my little surgery center table, if you will. And I got my glasses on now so I can see what I'm looking at. This is an Orion Star Max 127 millimeter EQ, so it must have came with a mount when somebody bought it. It must have been on an equatorial mount, I guess. Maksutov Cassegrain, of course. And it's 1,540 millimeter focal length, f12.1. Let's see, so if you're thinking about buying one of these, Max can be, they're really good for high power. That's the thing. So if you want to look at planets, the moon, small star clusters, I mean, it's great for something like if you're someplace dark, M57 ring nebula be fine. Probably could see the Dumbbell Nebula as long as you're in a good dark sky. Because, I mean, it's 5-inch diameter. That's plenty. It's just that it's f12. If you're wanting to look at something like the Andromeda Galaxy, this doesn't have the big enough field of view. Plus, I mean, you could see the core of the galaxy. When they figure the magnitude of it, they're looking at the core of it, the brightest part in the center. And then the large part of the galaxy is a lot fainter. So for something like that, if you're into galaxies, you're better off to get something like a big Newtonian, or you could get a big Schmidt-Cassegrain with a focal reducer. Some people have put focal reducers on these before, but they're not really designed for it. You can get if you get like a 0.63 focal reducer and put it on an F10 Schmidt-Cassegrain, works pretty good. So there you'd be, like say if you had an 8-inch one or a 10-inch, go down to f6.3 rather than say f5 or f4.7 or something. So it's not real far then. So those aren't as bad. But for the real faint stuff, you're better off with a big Newtonian or Dobsonian. We'll get I've got plenty of yoga mat material left. And it's just, I know it's all black, so I don't know if you can see much detail. It's maybe a little less than 1/8 of an inch thick, this particular one. You can buy all kinds of stuff. You can get a yoga mat. You can go into the kitchen stuff, and they've got mats that were designed to be used on the kitchen, maybe for hot pans or whatever. So there's all kinds of different things you can use, but this worked real good. So this was just in sporting goods. Like I say, I've got a ton of it left. And of course, this would be in a very long dew shield, but I can always cut some of it off. It's one thing, if I make it too short. So I'm probably going to want to go at least 6 inches or so, I'm guessing. I might go a little farther, and like I said, I can always trim it off if I notice it sagging too much. That's one thing I noticed with the other one. It would sag some, but it hasn't really bothered me, because the main time I use that big telescope is if I'm taking pictures of Jupiter or Saturn or something, you know, or if I want to do the moon. That's where I would find out if it really bugs me. If I'm taking an image of the moon and I've only got part of the moon in and this thing's hanging down vignetting, it would start looking weird. But if that happens, I can work with it. And then, of course, just plain old bubble wrap. I've got, this stuff has small bubbles. I guess you could use whatever you got. But I can just wrap this stuff around. And the other one, I taped on there with just clear packaging tape, like when I'm mailing a package. But this time, I want to be able to take this off, because when I bought this, I got lucky again. It came with a carrying bag from Orion. Those are real nice bags. And I do plan to take this with me on short trips. So I want to be able to take it off when I've got it being traveling in the car. So I've got some Velcro. Okay. So here, this is the other stuff I bought at Walmart. Just, you can pick this up anywhere. I think this was in the area where you'd find needles and thread and stuff. And you might find something like it in arts and crafts. But you can, this stuff here, it's just a roll that sticks to itself. So you don't have to worry about stitching it to anything or gluing it to anything. It'll just stick to itself, and I'll just wrap it around. So I'm going to do one wrap at once. I'll have to decide. I could actually leave this bubble wrap on all the time if I wanted to, because it's not going to be bigger than the tube. So if I do that, I won't have any issue with it interfering with me when I put it in the case, unless it's because I want to put the lens cap on, because I do have a lens hood. Let's see here. I wonder if this piece of bubble wrap just happens to be big enough. I can see it's more than long enough in one way. Surely it'll wrap around at least once. And of course I can cut it with scissors. I'm going to want to trim around my dovetail. and around my finder scope bracket. And you can probably hear some of this stuff popping. There's enough to wrap once. That's about perfect for that. I might see if I have enough of it laying around to do a second layer and do 2 of them. I think I do. So I'll get back with that here in a minute. I'll trim this down. So at least at the beginning, for getting position, I'm going to use some of that clear tape and just tack it to the tube so that when I pull it around, it'll kind of stay attached there while I'm trimming it down to the correct size. So I can make a little window there around my finder bracket. Get that. You can see it's a little bit loose, but that's okay. It'll help it out. And then I trimmed a nice little window, kind of sloppy if you will, around the dovetail bar, of course. And I want to make sure I leave enough room so that when I put this dovetail in, I'll end up here and I'll have to squeeze some of this down and I'll hear it popping. So that's something to think about. You don't want to make this too thick because you got to be able to get your dovetail bar to go down there in the mount. And I think I am going to go ahead and try having the bubble wrap part taped onto the tube, just avoiding taping it to the labels in case it tears that up. And I want to leave it loose as far as the tacking down here on the corrector plate end of it so that I can slide my lens hood, the cap on here. So I want it to be able to slide underneath the bubble wrap whenever I'm traveling with it. One thing I was thinking about, if somebody out there is into being an entrepreneur, I'm not, and if, you know, make something like this and think you could make a few pennies, you might be able to design one that looks nice. Maybe you can sell them. I think I'm going to try. So I've got it done with a single layer around. I think I'm going to try putting a second layer just around the part that's exposed as much. I'm not going to try to get it way down close to the dovetail or to the finder. I didn't have any problem getting a finder in and out, so that shouldn't be an issue. All right, so I put one layer of the bubble wrap going all the way around, giving a little bit of space around the dovetail, like I said, to make sure you can get down in that mount. And it's no big deal. If you're a little tight, you'll just pop the air bubbles there. I left some room around my finder scope. And then I also ended up doing 2 extra layers of bubble wrap over the main body. And I can trim this away a little bit too so that I can get the lens hood on and off. It looks like it'll work easy. So then I just got to do my yoga mat, and like I say, I'll attach it with this Velcro. While I'm thinking about it, if you're wanting to find another way to save a little money, I'm filming this with an old Android phone that still worked fine, but was becoming obsolete with all the new technology changes, and it was just like a $99 phone. So I wasn't going to get much out of it selling it or trying to do a trade-in. I didn't want to buy another expensive phone. But this phone works real good for making YouTube videos. This stuff cuts real easy with a pair of scissors. Nothing to that. And again, trim a little window around my finder bracket. And then I'll do the same thing around the dovetail. Yeah, I can maybe fine-tune that a little bit and leave room for the dovetail. I'll trim this back a little bit so it'll fit down in the mount. As you can see, it kind of sags down a little here. I might, when I take it out in the field or whatever, I might want to take a little tape and kind of fold it over and tack it on there just to keep it all from collapsing down. The other one I used some Velcro with adhesive and put a piece on there and stuck them together. It works okay. It's not perfect, but not bad. Another thing I thought about was you could tape some kind of a stick, like a skewer stick or something like you'd get for barbecuing on here. Tape that on the outside and make that a little more rigid. I may try that. Who'd have thunk I'd actually have skewer sticks. I bought, they were on sale for $1 or something. Believe it or not, several years ago, when people first started talking about Maksutov masks, they were selling the things for like $80, and I didn't want to pay $80, and I had a Celestron C8, and I found some of these dirt cheap, and I made a Maksutov mask out of them. It wasn't this same box container, and I just used Elmer's glue, and it actually worked. Just had to wait quite a while for the glue to dry. But if you use your imagination, you can make a lot of stuff. Just a matter of whether or not you're real concerned about what it looks like. And I understand that. I don't blame people for buying really nice stuff that looks professional, but I like trying to come up with little ideas to do stuff for next to nothing. So right now, this excess is out here probably as long as the tube or longer. I'm going to trim it down to about, give it at least 6 inches, I guess. And this stuff does have, this particular one, I don't know that it shows up on the video, but it's got kind of a grid pattern in it. It's got a texture. So it's real easy to cut down a straight line around it. Okay, almost all the way around here. Not perfectly square. I can fine tune that a little bit too. Part of that might be because I'm not perfectly square on this end either. But anywho, okay, I've got that trimmed down so it's relatively the same. And as you can see, it kind of hangs down a little bit there. So I'm going to try, I got a piece of tape on here right now. That's not going to be on there permanently. And of course, this is longer than the skewer stick. That's no big deal. We'll figure that out. But I'll tape some of these down. See how well they stay on there. They may come loose, I don't know. And when I remove a piece of the clear tape, it did take off some of that, but I mean very little. So it'd take a long time to really screw it up. Well, I've just tacked one of them on here. And that definitely adds to it. It doesn't want to, I mean, you can force it down, but the other one's just wanting to drop real quick with gravity. So that gives it a little bit of a rigidity, if you will. So I'll put a few of those on there. So right now I've only got 2 of these sticks on here. And I can really tell a difference. I can always add more later if I want. So then all I got to do, get out my little Velcro here, wrap it around the tube, cut that down to size. Of course, first thing I notice when I go to wrap that, down here at the mirror end, I can't really go a full 360. Obviously I can't go around the dovetail, and if I try to go out here, maybe if I slide this material, this rubber, back so that it's over the mirror a little, I can actually wrap it around the outside of the mirror. I can easily wrap one around between the end of the dovetail and the corrector plate. I can even put a couple of them there if I want. I got plenty of it. Main thing is it don't fall off. So we'll go around, give it a few extra inches for overlap. Even with one, this thing will stay on here. And then of course at this end down here, I've just got this fitting loose. I can either use some of that Velcro, or I use the stuff with self-adhesive, or I could wrap a piece of tape. I don't want anything reflective on the inside of it. So I haven't, obviously I haven't taped these things to the outside, and so the inside's pretty black. I'm sure, you can find material a lot more flat black than this, but I found it, I really liked it when I was doing planetary imaging. So anyway, that should give you an idea of what you can do without spending much money, to see if you can help make using your Maksutov a little easier. It might even, you could try it with a Schmidt Cassegrain too. There's no reason why you couldn't. They all have to come down to temperature. I guess you could use it with anything that you wanted. So I decided I would try another piece of this Velcro strap down here on the end. And I've just got it snugged up good enough to where it's not smashing it down. And that works kind of decent. It's not perfect. It's not perfectly round or anything. But you're not going to have an issue with vignetting if you're taking pictures of something like a planet anyway, or the Ring Nebula. If you're doing the moon in particular, I'd say, if it's really sagging down, you might start noticing something.